Rachel and Naomi sat on either side of Elvina. They seemed troubled and gloomy, and for once they were silent. Rachel was staring obstinately at her feet and swinging them to and fro. Naomi was frowning. Their spindles and staff lay abandoned on the bench. Naomi spoke first. "They're making him lick the sacred letters, aren't they, Elvina?" "Yes," Elvina began. "First they give him the honey cakes, then the apple and the egg." "Yes, yes," they interrupted. "We know that already. But what happens next?" "Then the teacher gives him a wax tablet with sacred letters on it. He spells them for Toby one by one, pointing them out with his finger. And then the teacher spreads honey on all the letters, and Toby licks it off so that he will taste the sweetness of the Torah. Then they all gather around Toby and congratulate him and dance around him." "And what about us?" asked Rachel finally. "Why don't we get all that? Why don't they let us lick the sacred letters? They don't even show them to us. Why, Elvina? Why?" She was on the verge of tears. Before Elvina had time to answer, Bella, who had been following the conversation from her footstool, answered for her. "What a stupid question. It's because you're girls. And what is normal for boys isn't normal for girls. That's all there is to it." Naomi glared at her elder sister as if she wanted to hit her. "We all know the only thing that interests you is how to please your future husband. And what's wrong with that?" Then, at the very same moment, the twins whispered to Elvina, one in each ear so nobody could hear. "Show us the letters. Teach us to read," they begged. They moved closer, and once they had started, there was no stopping them. They threw their arms around Elvina, stroked her hair, competed with her to see who could hug her the hardest. "Please, Elvina," they begged. "Ouch, you're suffocating me." Their warm mouths remained glued to her ears. "Say you will, Elvina. Say you will teach us," they whispered over and over. Elvina closed her eyes, and a smile crept across her lips. "Well?" asked the twins. "Well, Solomon ben Isaac, my grandfather, says that there is nothing in our law that forbids educating girls." "Are you saying yes?" they asked, looking at Elvina expectantly. "Yes." The twins were overjoyed. "Can we begin today?" they urged. "Yes, we'll begin today," replied Elvina. I am a Jew. I have a lot of identities, but that is probably the one I enjoy and most like to share. Being a Jew, I love to read. My whole room is covered in more books than it can hold. I like all kinds of things to read about, but I get excited when a book with Judaism comes along. Hey, representation matters, and it's special when you find that you're not alone, that you're inside a story, whether it's a historical document or a work of art, or both. That brings me to today's book, a children's novel called My Guardian Angel by Sylvie Veil. By the way, that's the niece of the French philosopher and activist Simone Weil, which is another fascinating story, I'm sure, but we'll talk about this today. So the time of recording is the holiday Shavuot in the Jewish year 5782. And for those of you who don't know, that's the day that Jews celebrate when God gave us the Torah. Lots of beautiful traditions and memories pass around. I'm going to share one of mine. This morning, I was feeling sad for one reason or another. I had to get out somehow. I knew my temple was celebrating the holiday, so picked myself up quickly and I drove an hour to the synagogue. I put on my talit, my prayer shawl, my kippah, my covering, and I stood, I rocked, I prayed, I sang. Then my Mora, my Hebrew teacher, came and whispered if I could bless the Torah. My heart shined and shook at the same time. I was frightened that I couldn't do it, or I'd mess up. Still, I wanted very much to try. I wanted to read and say the Hebrew prayer and sanctify the memory of us receiving the words that make up a deep part of our identity as a people. Maybe it's because I'm a Jew. I don't know, but I love words, Torah or not. Words are sacred. They're like light. My Mora sat with me and we whispered a practice blessing together. I went up to the rabbi and the other people helping him hold this enormous illuminated scroll. They all smiled at me and they whispered encouragement, and I got to kiss the sacred words with my talit. I got to read the sacred blessing with my siddur, my prayer book, and most of all, I got to stand with my people, each of us sacred. When I came home, I knew I had to share a Jewish book on this holiday for my channel. I have so many in my library, but I picked this one because the main character shared my love of words. This is the story of Rashi's granddaughter, Elvina. Rashi, or Solomon ben Isaac, was one of Judaism's greatest teachers. His commentary on Torah was and is used for the Humash, the 5 books of Moses. And he's one of the reasons Talmud, which is a collection of law and legend, is alive and well. He lived in the 1000s in Troyes, France. He opened his own school there. He's a pretty fascinating person. I urge you to look him up, but this book is about his granddaughter. See, Rashi had no sons, so he taught his 3 daughters to read, write, and study Torah and Talmud. While that's not forbidden, it's seriously looked down upon to the point of suffering. Anyone who sees Yentl knows what I'm talking about. Rashi's granddaughter, Elvina, was in fact a learned woman, and she became an inspiration to her people. This novel is an imagining of her youth. So we start when she's 12, nearly 13, and she can sense almost painfully how unusual she is. She loves to write. This book is actually her writing. I mean, imagined writing, fictional, of course. It's weaved like a braided bread, like a challah, in its narration. It's partly Elvina talking to herself in the first person. It's partly a third-person narrator watching her every move. And then, most touchingly, it goes to second-person narration. Elvina talking to us as her mazel, her guardian angel. Now, she says at the beginning that her grandfather Rashi taught her about how people have guardian angels that speak up for them in heaven. He's referring to men, but Elvina asks if women have them too. He jokes that women have no problem speaking up for themselves. But then he gets serious and he tells her, yeah, all humans have one. So, Elvina talks to her angel throughout the book for all her emotions and her trials. Sometimes we read what she thinks of the angel is saying back. You know, I think it's interesting that her angel, in her perspective, is very challenging. Not a comfort or reassurance, but someone who questions her ideas and urges her what must be done. That might be different than what many readers imagine angels are supposed to be. But think of it from a Jewish perspective. The name Israel itself means one who struggles with God and prevails. Yeah, our angels do challenge us, wrestle with us. And Alvina is up for that challenge. Now, she isn't really a rebel. She's considered a good girl. She's respectful to all her family members. She can run a house when her mother is gone. She keeps Shabbat very holy in a very feminine way. But everyone also knows she is unusual. Not only because she loves to study and write, but she speaks her mind. She's extremely generous, and she takes big risks. The story takes place during the god-awful Crusades. Peter the Hermit is coming through their town with his men, and the Jews are rightfully afraid for their lives. This is way before the state of Israel, of course. We're not able to fight back. That doesn't mean the Jews of this time don't resist brutal murder or forced conversion. They did in various ways, as this book shows. But you can feel the tension throughout the story and how dangerous it is to be a Jew. As you read, you kind of see Alvina as a Queen Esther reflection. She's constantly crossing between two worlds to help in such a dangerous time. She goes back and forth between men and women to take care of her loved ones. She goes back and forth between Jewish and Christian citizens to save her people. These things are not easy at any time in history. Let me relate a little. So, there's a scene in the book where Alvina, who she's skilled with herbs and remedies, so she goes to heal a Christian friend. Though they shower her with hugs and kisses, they also bully her, nearly demanding her to become a Christian, to give up her books and become baptized. I know this feeling. My Jewish friends know this feeling. Alvina knows it's awful. It's awful. I'm often asked to become something I'm not, and when I refuse, it bothers people. Sometimes it's just a humorous exchange, but sometimes it's a dangerous one. Even in the book, there's this kidnapping scene of two Jewish boys who are threatened to be baptized, taken from everything they've ever known, and forced into the Crusades. Yeah, Jewish children were stolen. But Alvina, and I think she represents her people well here, she, and most of us Jews, don't want others to be like us. But we hurt when others try to make us into something we're not. Perhaps anyone who's been bullied can identify or relate to that. And maybe it could even be an eye-opener to people who quest to change others. Now, it's not all beautiful and untouched by prejudice in her Jewish community either. The men and women are separate in many ways, and they're expected to have different roles rather than choosing them. And if you don't, you're looked down upon severely. It hurts. Not everyone is Rashi, who is very kind and aware in the book. He admires his granddaughter the way she is. Now, Alvina is not quite like, say, Yentl from that film or that short story. She loves to study and write, but she also enjoys parts of the traditional woman roles too, like
preparing and praying and for the Shabbat dinner, and spinning wool, and looking forward perhaps to marriage one day. I love how the author blurs the lines of what she is. Perhaps her spirit is non-binary in a way. I relate to this because I too struggle to find what mitzvah applies to me as a person, not only as a man or a woman. And I often find rebuke in the Jewish community. Not at my own temple, but elsewhere. I remember once I shared about my wearing a tallit every morning to pray, and I got tons and tons of comments bashing me in one way or another. I kept my peace, saying there's all different kinds of ways to be a Jew. You practice your way, I'll practice mine. That didn't help, and they kept at it. But I have a friend, and this friend is one of the most devout Jews I know. He kind of was my own Rashi in that moment, and he told me not to pay attention to those comments. He encouraged me to find my own intimate language with what's holy. You know, this holiday is also a holiday for converts. We read the book of Ruth during this time. She's perhaps the most famous Jewish convert, and she's remembered with that saying, "Whether you go, I will go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God." And she was the great-grandmother of King David. Converts are people who choose to be Jewish. Sometimes they too blur the lines, not in the least because they're not always accepted. They might be considered to have a strange backstory, or a strange tradition, or a strange belief. That doesn't mean they're any less genuine. Like Ruth, they are serious, and they don't leave when you offer them a way out. I don't normally share this beyond my dearest friends, but I'm a convert. I have Jewish ancestors, but I was raised a Christian. And by the age of 12, I began to depart away from that towards Judaism. I studied for years on my own, and eventually with my current rabbi, and I went through the official process to become a member of the tribe. I even had my B'nai Mitzvah in Israel. Some people still don't recognize me, but like Alvina, I do find kindred spirits. I have a close group of people I met in Israel. I have a loving synagogue that I just celebrated with. And I want to bring up that one friend I just mentioned again. Remember, this holiday is about when we received the Torah from Mount Sinai. There's a legend that all Jews, past, present, and future, were at Sinai then to accept that journey. I asked my friend if I was there too, and he wrote to me, "Yes, you stood there with the Jewish people at Sinai, and in Auschwitz, and in Jerusalem. That's what you signed up for." And today I remember that as I stood in my temple with both men and women encouraging me, a person of fluid identities, to kiss the Torah with my tallit, to bless it in our special language that I had to learn to read and write in. I think this book is a treasure. I hear it's well liked in France, but I hope it gets more attention in its English translation too. For Jewish and non-Jewish children, Jewish and non-Jewish adults, it's an important part of history, and its lessons are quite ageless and sacred. I believe so many people will be able to find themselves as Alvina in these pages. Chag Sameach. That's Hebrew for happy holiday. In other words, have a blessed Shavuot. Thank you. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe. But also, most importantly, in the comments, tell me your own experiences, whether you've read this book or you relate to anything I said, or you're just checking in because you're celebrating Shavuot too. I don't know, anything you want to say. I love reading comments and replying to them. And thank you so much. And please, please, recommend any books of youth literature you'd like me to reflect on next. Whether children, teen, classic, Jewish, non-Jewish, doesn't matter. Thank you very much.